Hello, hello. So today's project is going to be a drink coaster. There we go. Shout out to the Yeti people with their lovely cups. And this is a 6x6 coaster, so you can see how nicely that works for something like these outdoor style cups. Or you can have the 5x5 size, which is the one that we'll be doing today. Or you can have an 8x8 size, which is also included in the pattern. And the design for this one is a fish, you can see, and included is you have the option to put your own name here, or you can choose the one that has nothing and it's just a circle outline, or you can choose the one that is also included that says fishing. So today we are doing this and we're going to get started making it. All right. So for this project we need just a few pieces of material. I like to use a fusible fleece, so I have the fusing on one side and it's fleece on the other. You can also use a thermalon batting if you want a heat protectant in there. And you need a piece of fabric that will be for the front. It'll show on the outside portion. You will need a piece of fabric that will be on the inside applique portion. And if you're using a light color over a darker color, then I like to use a piece of cutaway stabilizer and put that underneath my white to help block out the other color. And then for the backing, you will need two pieces of material, and on the back of all my material I actually have an SF101 Pellon. It's on the back of everything except for the fleece. And so you will need two longer pieces of material, and they will get folded in half, and you have a finished kind of edge, and then you have the open edge, and you need two pieces like that. It's the other one, and those will get put on like this, so that the two finished edges will be overlapping. So you need to make sure that they are long enough so that you will be covering the whole thing. And that is what we need for this one. So let's get started doing the placement stitch. Alright, so I've gone to run the placement stitch. I didn't think you need to see that. And as you can see, it is just a circle. And that is a placement for the batting tack down. So you need a piece of batting, and you can use whichever type you like. You can even use felt if you choose. So you need to put the batting over top of the placement stitch, and then you go run the batting tack down. So time to cut out the batting, and you cut close to the tack down. So now the batting has been cut out around the tack down, and the next thing that we have to do is we need to add the main material piece of fabric. And so I use a fusible fleece, so you can hear that the fusible side is up. And what I like to do is I like to lay my piece over and covering all the outline placement stitch from the first one, and then with a little mini iron I find it easiest to iron this into place. There we go, and now we need to take it back to the machine, and we need to run the tack down stitch to hold the material in place. Alright, the tack down has been done to hold the material, and the next thing we have to do is we need to run the placement stitch for the applique. Alright, so I've done the placement stitch, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to cut out the center part because I'm using a dark fabric. Now you don't have to do that, it's optional. It's because when I have a dark fabric and then a light fabric going on it, I can kind of see the dark fabric through the light, and I don't like that. And the other option is you can also use a piece of cutaway, and then you can put this over and you can see how much darker it is. The white is, so that you won't see that go through. However, I also like to just cut out the center so that I don't see the marks. Most times I do have a white batting underneath, but this time I have black. However, it'll give a more uniform look for me. There we go. So I do have a little bit of that white left, but it's not going to matter. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this piece of cutaway stabilizer on it, and I'm actually going to go back and rerun the placement stitch so that I can cut this one out. Okay, so I have gone back and I have rerun the placement stitch there so that I can cut out this piece, and it'll give me a nicer base. Now again, this is completely optional. Okay, so I have cut out that material so that I can put the next one over. Now, if you were not going to be using a material underneath, then what you would do, because this piece is optional, you would run the placement stitch and then you would just put the actual material right over. So the next thing that we have to do is we have to put the actual applique material down, and see, you can see the difference in what it looks like by a lighter piece over darker if I was just to do it that way. So I have the whiter base under anyway. So now we have to go back and run the cut line stitch for the actual material piece. All right, so I have run the actual cut line stitch, and now I'm just going to cut out the applique material as you normally would. Here we have the applique material that has been cut. Now what you need to make sure is that it's not cut too close, but it also needs to be cut close enough. So there is a fine balance between it, and I try to leave about a 1/16 of an inch around so that it doesn't pull out, but that you won't see the excess on the outside. All right, so the next thing that we have to do is we have to put it back in and run the tack down. All right, so the tack down is done, and this is your opportunity. If you see anything sticking outside the tack down line, then that is what you will want to cut away, because it will be showing on the outside of the final satin stitch. So this is your last chance to get rid of any little pieces that you don't want. So the next stitch that I'm going to do is going to be a stipple stitch, and this is optional, but I am going to do it in the color of the material. So there's the stipple stitch. And the next thing that we're going to do is run the satin stitch on the outline, and then along with that there is a stitch that goes on either side of the satin stitch, and we're going to run those as well. Okay, so there's the back, and here is the front. So you can see the satin stitch and the detail outline stitches are done. the next thing to do with this particular design, because all the coaster designs are different, however, they are put together the same. The order of the steps may not be the same, but they are all put together very similarly. You've got the batting, the main material, the centerpiece for the applique, and then whatever design comes with it, and the very last step will be to put on the back piece to flip it. So now I am going to run the fish stitching for this particular coaster. All right, so here is the fish, all completed. I don't know if it can get clearer. And now, for another optional thing is to do a name on there. And I do have a name in there, so I am going to do that next. So there is my fish and my name with a backwards name, clearly. It does say Justin. And so now the next thing that I'm going to do is there is a detail bean stitch that goes in there. You don't have to do it. That one is optional as well. I just like it because it holds down the material on the coaster nicely. So let's see if you can see the outline there. All right, so now the next thing that we have to do is the last thing. All right, so now we have to add the two backing pieces to it. So you get those two pieces at the beginning, that are the one long piece folded in half with the folded finished edge. Those will go in the center. So you need to make sure that it covers the whole outline. So you put it on there, and it can be center or slightly off center, however you want it. And the finished edge is here. And then you take the other one that has the finished edge as well. So here's the folded edge. So you take that edge and you put the folded edge side over the other one, and you overlap them by about 1/2 inch. You see? So this will get overlapped on this one by about 1/2 inch. And then just tape it down. I like using the Scotch tape for this because it comes off really easily after it's been stitched over. So just tape that down, and then the next stitch that's going to go is it's going to go around and hold these two pieces, the front and the back, together. Now you need to make sure that you have the piece that you want to see showing on the outside, that is face down and together. What you see here is going to be on the inside of the coaster and you won't see it. Okay, so the stitching is done to hold the front and back together. And then, as I mentioned, this tape is really quite easy to take off. Okay, my finger splints on, it's tougher. There we go. Now, with the tape off, we can take it out of the hoop and we can cut it out. So I just wanted you to see on the back how there is a little bit of thread still left showing on the back. Now, you don't need to cover that because it's going to be inside the coaster. However, if you do want to cover it, now would be the time to put a piece of iron-on stabilizer over it if you felt better doing that. All right, I like to use the pinking shears to cut it out. This material that I am using is a little more difficult as well. However, if you use regular scissors to cut it out, you want to go around the edge and just give it some clips to make sure that your circle will turn nicely. But I use the pinking shears, so it should be fine. And then what we do is, because you have the back here and you have the front and the back on the other side, you just go open your little flap there that you left with the two finished edges, and you go ahead and you flip it. And here you want to be gentle. You don't want to pull these out because you want them to stay nice and tight, so that you get a nice circle. And how fabulous is that circle, right? There we go. So now that you have it all poked through, you can iron the back of it here. Oh, I'm gonna turn on my iron. All right, now the iron should be hot enough. So you'd like to give it a really good press to keep the edges flat. My iron is leaking. Get yourself a nice circle. All right, now as you can see, we have a nice coaster. Now it depends. You can actually leave it like that if you choose on the back. It will be open. However, if you wanted to close it, you could either glue it shut, or what I use is basically a steam-a-seam. So I just tear a piece of it off and I just stick it in. Make sure that you're not seeing it on the outside anywhere. All right, and you can see that it glues it down. So that cleans up the back. All right, you guys. I hope that you like this project. You do have a few options with it. Oh. So you can add yourself a name. You've got the regular and you've got this. All right, thank you for watching. Subscribe and give me a thumbs up if you like it.